Hello, my name's Hans and today at Rimmer Brothers we're going to be changing the rear brake discs and pads on a 2017 Jaguar F-Pace. Today we are going to be fitting these really good quality aftermarket discs and pads and wear sensor. We do the genuine ones if you require those. Before we start, always a good idea to find the locking wheel nut key from inside the boot. Should be with the jack underneath the spare wheel, where the spare wheel lives. We're going to crack this off by hand. And all the other wheel nuts we'll do with an impact driver. Just to replace the brake pads and to do any service work, we need to put the handbrake, electric handbrake, into maintenance mode. We can use a diagnostic tool or can try doing it manually from inside the car. To do this, we need to turn the ignition on and then press the handbrake lever down for 2 seconds, 1, 2, and then we press down the accelerator for 2 seconds, turn it off, turn it on again really quick, and we should be in maintenance mode. We can now turn the ignition off and we are now in maintenance mode. Now we're in maintenance mode with a parking handbrake. We need to remove this clip, then undo these bolts there. So just using a pair of pliers, going to slowly tease out the spring. And now there's 2 little rubber caps on the back. Remove those 2, and with a 7mm hex we're going to loosen these off. Also there's a wear pad sensor. Hopefully we can wiggle it and pull it out. If it doesn't come out, doesn't really matter, you can break it off because we'll be fitting a new one. Undo these 2, top and bottom. We can also remove the sensor wire carefully, and also we need to disconnect the electric cable for the handbrake. There's a little plastic clip, we need to push it back slightly, then we can squeeze it gently and then release it backwards. Now we've undone the 2 locating pins and disconnected everything apart from the hydraulic brake hose, we can gently remove the caliper, and I'm going to support it on this box while we so we don't strain the hose. We can now remove the rest of the pads, and we need to undo the 2 bolts that hold this carrier. Using a 15mm socket, I'm going to loosen the 2 bolts. It's a bit tight. Due to the length of this and the gap we have here, I'm going to remove that with a spanner now. That's the second of the 2 bolts, and now we can remove the carrier. Once the carrier is out of the way, we just need to undo this screw here and then we can release the disc. This is extremely tight, not wanting to come out, so just going to give it a bit of penetrating oil, leave a little while and we'll try it again. Hopefully it'll come off this time. Oh yes, look at that, straight off. Well, now the discs should be ready to come off, but it's nicely corroded onto the hub, so we just need to tap it a few times. We're not putting this one back, so it doesn't matter about damaging it. And it's starting to move. Now we just need to clean up this face, ready to fit the new disc. These discs come ready painted, but it's always a good idea to degrease them anyway. So I'm using some brake cleaner. We're going to wipe it round. It's important that the hub is not lubricated with any grease or anything. It needs to be dry. We don't want any lubricant in there. So while it's all nice, we'll line up the little bolt there with the hole. As soon as that's on, we can replace the little set screw. Just going to put some copper slip on the threads, seeing as it was so hard to come out this time. Hopefully the next time it comes out, it'll come out a bit easier than it did this time. Now we need to clean up the caliper. Just clean all these edges and make sure it's all nice, then we can refit it. As you can see, we've got some new bolts ready and the caliper's cleaned up nicely, and we put some copper slip where the pads are going to go. So we carefully slot it around the back and fit the new bolts. We're going to nip the bolts up, then torque them up to a certain amount, and then we have to angular tighten them. So we'll just nip them up first. Okay, we've tightened those bolts up to 70 Newton meters. We now need to turn it another 120 degrees. So what I'm going to do is, I'll show you with an old bolt. We need to tighten it up until that flat there is where that one was. So each flat is 60 degrees. So 2 flats is 120. So that's how much we need to turn it. You see where the 2 white lines now meet up? That means we've turned it 120 degrees. Just going to do the bottom one now. Again, you can see 2 white lights. 2 white marks are marked up, so we're all the way there. Before we forget, this screw here needs to be tightened up to 35 Newton meters. Now we can fit the pads, and we'll have to push the piston back in the caliper first. I'm using a service tool to push the piston back into the cylinder. It should go in lovely and easy now that it's in service mode. That's all the way back. Now we can fit the pads and refit the caliper. Now we've removed the little self-adhesive backing. This is the pad that goes on the outside. This is the one that goes on the inside nearest the piston. That's where the wear pad sensor fits. So if we slot those into there, make sure these are pushed back and we haven't twisted the brake hose. Should be able to slot the caliper on, screw in the pins. These bolts here, which are slider pins, they should be tightened up to 28 Newton meters. Once we've fitted that, we can put the spring back. Then we need to do the brake pad wear sensor. To fit the new brake pad wear sensor, I'm going to fit the new one and then pull it through alongside the old one, so that I know where I've been. Just a matter of case of slotting it into the little metal brackets, following it through all the way to the end. Lastly, we need to place these little plastic caps on the end of the sliders, and don't forget to reconnect the electrical connection for the electric handbrake. Push it all the way up, and there's a little plastic bit that needs pushing all the way in. That locks it, stops it coming out. Now we just need to replace the wheel. All we need to do once we've put it back on the ground is tighten the wheel nuts up diagonally, first up to 70 Newton meters and then up to 133 Newton meters. Once we've done this side, we can do exactly the same on the other side. We've completed the other side. The only difference is that doesn't have a brake pad wear sensor, but otherwise it's just the same. So now we've done both sides, we've lowered it down onto the floor, and now all we need now is to tighten up the wheel nuts. First of all, they tightened up to 70 Newton meters. And then we set it up to 133. Okay, so we've tightened up the wheel nuts correctly. The only thing to do now is to set the handbrake and deactivate the maintenance mode. That's basically doing the opposite to setting it into activation mode.